Welcome back to COD Connected. My name is Garrett Drake, and today I am absolutely thrilled to be sharing my thoughts on my time with the Halo Infinite technical preview. I cannot believe it's been 6 years since Halo 5. It's obviously been a very long time coming, and I, along with every other massive Halo fan around the world, has waited a very long time to get our hands on this game. I have a lot to say about every aspect of the preview. I want to break it down not only just for the fun of it, but for anyone who's interested in having questions answered or concerns you may have, or interest, other things you want explored. I'm hoping what I share today will help you better understand what the game's like to play if you haven't played it yet. And thankfully, much of what I have to share is extremely positive. There are some things that I don't like as much, some things I'm concerned about, but I'm going to break it all down. We're going to get into it. But before I do so, I wanted to give a little context about myself, my history with Halo, because I have been a diehard fan of this franchise since the very beginning. I have incredible memories with every entry in the franchise, but my heart truly lies with the original trilogy. Naturally, I'm sure most of you feel the same if you're a Halo fan, but Halo 1 and 2, love them to death, have incredible memories of some of my best friends playing those games, but Halo 3 has long been my absolute favorite in the entirety of the franchise. It has stood the test of time in every way, I believe. I think it still looks great visually. It's still incredibly fun to play 14 years later. I've been playing at least once or twice a week for the entirety of that time with a couple of my best friends, and we still have the time of our lives hopping on the Master Chief Collection to get a few matches in a couple times a week. And with 343, there are certainly things I've liked about their Halo games, but many things I've disliked over the years. I don't hate any of them, but I haven't loved any of them as much as I've loved Bungie's entries. I think Halo 4 had a decent campaign. It had okay multiplayer. I think Halo 5 had a horrible campaign and pretty decent multiplayer. And what's wild is that both Halo 4 and 5 feel entirely different. So going into Infinite, I truly had no idea what to expect. I keep up with every Halo influencer, every Halo YouTuber, including Hidden Xperia, Actman, more recently Shyway. If you haven't seen Shyway's content, I highly recommend it. Many other Halo YouTubers at that, and I've seen them all voice their various opinions on the mechanics of 343's Halo games throughout the years, and I've aligned with many of them. I'm one of those guys that does not love the inclusion of sprint in any Halo game. Even in Reach, I didn't love sprint. Beyond that, I believe the simplistic nature of the moment-to-moment gameplay has sort of been stripped away over the years. But with all that being said, I wanted to go into Infinite with a fresh perspective. I wanted to leave my bias at the door and just see what 343 has to offer after all this time, and I'm extremely excited about it, to say the very least.
It's working! It's working!
I'm gonna break everything down, but we gotta start with the big three: guns, grenades, and melee. Every weapon I've used in Infinite so far feels incredibly powerful and brutal, and I think that has a lot to do with the sound design, which is outstanding. I mean, every single weapon sounds so cool, from the assault rifle, especially the BR. The sidekick sounds great, the Bulldog shotgun sounds awesome, the sniper, the rockets. Audibly, everything just packs a lot of punch. While visual and audible hit markers are definitely more Call of Duty than they are Halo, they provide a ton of satisfying feedback when you hit targets. And it may be a little difficult to understand without actually playing the game for yourself, but even on mouse and keyboard, without rumble effects, without vibration, each weapon just feels very hefty and meaty to fire. Fortunately, the assault rifle actually kills people in this game. It's never necessarily been one of my go-tos really in any Halo. It had its moments in Halo 4 and 5, but this is probably the most accurate and deadly assault rifle to date. It could potentially be nerfed based on player feedback. It hasn't really been detrimental to me, but I've been pretty deadly with it myself, and a lot of that has to do with the Smart Link feature that every single weapon has. It's surprisingly deadly at range if you're using Smart Link, especially if you're hitting headshots. It's pretty nasty, so I would not be surprised if they nerf that down a bit, at least at range. I'm fairly certain the sidekick in Infinite is the most fun I've had with the UNSC handgun in Halo. Similar to Halo 5, it rewards you for being accurate, and if you are, it is extremely deadly. It's practically a BR, almost a sniper if you can nail headshots from afar and time your shots correctly. I have a ton of thoughts on every BR variant since Halo 2, but Halo 5's is probably best compared to the Halo 4 BR. It's a slower rate of fire, but it's still a 4-shot kill if you're hitting guys in the head, and even with a bit of recoil, it's pretty easy to be accurate. I mean, the thing practically feels like a power weapon. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about the Commando just yet. There have been moments where it feels like it has pinpoint accuracy and kills targets immediately, and there have been other times where I feel like I'm nailing headshots but seemingly dealing no damage whatsoever, and I think I've determined it's based on the range and whether or not you're scoped. I don't know why, but if you're at long range and you're scoped, it feels like it deals a lot more damage than it does when you're unscoped. And 343 claims that Smart Link and scoping your weapons is not supposed to make much of a difference whatsoever, similar to traditional Halo. That's merely just a means of helping you aim a bit better or provide an additional means of accuracy. But in my experience, both the assault rifle and commando at range, when you're smart linking or looking down the scope, seem to deal more damage. I could be wrong, but that's what it felt like many times when I was using it. Not much to say about the rocket launcher. It sounds beautiful when you fire it and when it explodes. At least audibly, it sounds like the most powerful rocket launcher to date. The sniper's pretty interesting. I'm not sure how I feel about it either. The sound design's incredibly badass. It easily sounds like the coolest sniper we've ever had, but it feels a little weird to shoot. I consider myself to be a pretty decent sniper in Halo, and in the weapon drill, I nailed my shots, but I think it's due to the nature of the speed of these matches, especially in an arena setting. It's pretty difficult to nail shots when you're scoped. No scoping's pretty manageable, but scoping in on these arena matches when someone's sprinting past you is pretty tricky. I may just need more practice with it, and you could very well say I just need to get good. That's fair. The Bulldog shotgun, Bulldog, also rewards you for being accurate. I think the spread is much more narrow than previous shotguns. It also has a faster rate of fire and feels very good to shoot. A ton of recoil, but hopefully down the road, if not closer to launch, they either reveal or add the classic shotgun to the game. And this is a random thought. I'd even like to see a third variant of the shotgun that's similar to the Doomslayer's super shotgun. I think a double-barreled, very widespread, heavy damage shotgun could be really cool. And very limited ammo too. I'm thinking max 4 shots, because I'm just thinking about how sick it could be to have a grapple hook fly up to an area or fly towards someone, just blast them to bits with a double-barrel shotgun. Of course, 2 shells, fires very quickly. You get 4 shots max. It only kills in 1 to 2 shots if you're within like a couple feet of someone. If you're even 6 feet back, I'd say it doesn't kill someone in 1 shot, but it rewards you for getting up in people's faces. That could be awesome. I'm probably not the only one to say that the Pulse Carbine's my least favorite weapon in the preview, and I see what they're going for. It's a slower rate of fire from the BR, but it kills much faster if you're accurate. And the sweet spot seems to be at mid-range, because both close range and further away, I would get my ass kicked every single time I picked up that weapon. I'm not a game designer, I could be totally wrong about this, but off the top of my head, I feel like if they slightly increase the rate of fire and maybe slightly reduce the damage, it could compete a little better with the sidekick, the BR, just weapons at range in general and make it a little more viable. The plasma pistol sounds sick. It's the same plasma pistol we've had throughout every Halo game, but weirdly it is so difficult to be accurate with charged shots, and I'm not one to just spam the noob combo, but I at least wanted to test it out, and I maybe once out of a dozen shots I took with a fully charged blast hit a target at varying ranges too. It was really weird. But the aspect that I do admire is that it has a very fast rate of fire and also rewards headshots. It's probably the deadliest plasma pistol we've had, at least with its standard shots versus charged shots so far. I'm excited about the potential of the Heatwave. There are a lot of cool things you can do with it. Very difficult to use. It's very skill based, but if you're accurate with this thing when you're shooting vertically, if you hit 2 shots at close range, it always kills people. Horizontally, it's not quite as deadly, but it helps with, of course, the spread if you have multiple targets in front of you. And I really like how it ricochets. I think in an arena setting especially, it could get really interesting. I never killed anyone ricocheting shots, but I can see someone who is just very familiar with it, very skilled with it, really taking advantage of the ability to ricochet around corners. The Needler's been pretty deadly since Halo 3. It's changed here and there between Halo 4 and 5, but this thing's nasty. I mean, mid-range, if you're even remotely accurate, you're gonna slaughter whoever's in front of you. I think they've given it limited ammo, so you can't really spam it. I don't ever feel a sense of gratification from killing someone with a Needler, but if you're out to win and couldn't care less about your means of winning, the Needler is one of your best options to take out targets. The Skewer's gnarly. It's very gnarly. I love firing that thing. It is incredibly difficult to be accurate, but when you nail shots, man, that is one of the most satisfying weapons I have ever used in Halo by far. And honestly, I love that it demands perfect accuracy, mostly because it is a one-shot kill when you hit a target, and as we saw in the multiplayer reveal trailer, it's meant to be an anti-vehicular weapon. I've always loved power weapons that are very limited in ammo, and one that really rewards you for being skilled with it. And I think the Skewer has the potential to be the best power weapon, anti-vehicular weapon we've had in Halo so far, because it looks like if you hit a vehicle based on where you hit it, it isn't always going to completely destroy it, just heavily damage it. And I think that is a beautiful blend of one-shot kills if you're hitting players, and of course heavily damaging vehicles but not outright destroying them completely. I'm also a little unsure about the Ravager. I mean, if you're accurate with it, again, it's very deadly. You can kill guys in 2 shots. And playing against bots, it was difficult to find 2 of them really close together at once, so I couldn't tell if the spread's very far. For example, if there were 2 bots or 2 players really close together, if you nail a shot, if it would kill both of them. But definitely on just one individual player at medium range and especially close range, it is nasty. Finally, on to grenades. don't really have any complaints. They feel great. Frags bounce off walls the way you'd want them to. Plasmas feel as great as they always have. And I'm glad that with the return of the spike grenades, they actually feel deadly for once. I mean, when you stick people in Halo 3, they'd kill people, but if you even throw them at their feet or a wall nearby, it'd deal very minimal damage, but in this game, they're pretty intense. Similar to Halo 5, you do throw them much quicker than you do in other Halo games, and I think it works really well with the speed of mobility. But it can be a bit frustrating at times, especially with the removal of the dash ability from Halo 5. Personally, I'm glad it's gone. I thought it was unique for Halo 5. It definitely led to some interesting moment-to-moment scenarios, but I much prefer Halo with stripped-down mechanics. It's frustrating because, especially against bots, they are deadly accurate with those grenades, man. They nail their throws. They know, it's almost like they know exactly where you're gonna go. And a lot of them, when they're near death, will just pop a grenade at their feet when you're shooting at them, and it'll bounce right toward you and kill you almost every single time. They eventually become very predictable, but real players have made for a far more enjoyable experience, which I'll get to in a little bit. Alongside the weapons, melee feels crunchy and intense. I know that's probably a weird way to describe it, but it feels so good to hit someone in the face with a gun. And I'm very happy to see the return of physics. I've seen some hilarious clips that they're obviously going to patch of guys getting meleeed and just flying outside the map, which is a beautiful thing to see. I'd love to have it stick around, but I'm glad that there are physics in the game. Meleeing a player and having them ragdoll a few feet away from you is always satisfying, and you can only melee people within a very slim distance. And I much prefer that. I loved meleeing people in Halo 3, but sometimes you could lunge halfway across the arena, it felt like, to get a kill. So I like melee being a very tight window of space between players, and I think it's just right so far. I've had a weird revelation with mobility. Playing the game versus watching the game, both feel and look fast. I mean, while I'm playing it, I feel like I'm moving pretty quickly, but in watching it, I feel like I'm moving even quicker than when I was playing it. It's really weird. And by this point, it probably sounds cliche because I feel like I've seen a lot of people make this comparison, but it does feel like a healthy blend between Halo 3 and Halo 5. I believe it's been determined that sprint only increases your base movement speed by 3%, so some people are saying it's entirely useless. It's merely just an animation to make players that are used to having sprint in modern shooters be satisfied. I don't know what the motivation is, but it is interesting in how it affects the radar. So if you're just walking like classic Halo style, not sprinting around like a madman, you don't actually appear on the radar, but if you're sprinting, you show up everywhere. I don't really have too many thoughts on that because I only got to play 2 matches with real players, and no one ever really snuck up on me because I think naturally a lot of real players have a tendency to sprint if they're given the option to do so. And bots are so predictable that they rarely ever got the drop on me. So I'm not sure how I feel about the radar just yet. Hopefully in future flights leading up to launch, I can have a better idea of how it affects moment-to-moment gameplay, but so far don't have any complaints, but not sure about it just yet. As I mentioned, dash is gone, but slide is a very effective mechanic. You can really get a speed boost and a nice leap out of them when you use ramps, staircases to really boost your momentum sliding into certain scenarios. It can get you killed if you don't use it effectively, but I found that in certain situations, if you really use slide to your advantage, you can really get the drop on some players. Not as much with bots, because it's like they just know you're there even if you sneak up behind them, which is a little frustrating, but with real players in the 2 matches I played, sliding around corners to really get the advantage or to flank an enemy really proved useful. It's pretty cool. And I don't have a strong opinion on clamber. I didn't hate it in Halo 5. It definitely got me killed a lot when I was trying to climb up on ledges, but there is a meta to that game with traversal that if you master it, you can really use it to your advantage. Honestly, I could live with it. I could live without it. I love, again, the simplicity of Halo 1, 2, and 3, where you're just using your jump, crouch jump to get around the maps. So not a huge impression on clamber in Halo Infinite, but it's very similar to Halo 5, so I guess it's here to stay. Now, all that working in unison is surprisingly beautiful. I think they have finally refined what they've done with Halo 4, 5, and jumping into Infinite. Mechanically, this is probably the best Halo game 343's developed. Now, I know these are very common terms to describe mobility in any FPS game, but it feels weighty and it feels very smooth. Probably best compared to how Titanfall feels, just a bit heavier. Now, in comparison to Halo 5, it doesn't feel nearly as light and floaty. It just feels more grounded, hefty, and buttery smooth. I love it. You raise your weapon out of sprint much quicker than you did in Halo 5, so it doesn't really lead to getting you killed instantly if you're sprinting around the map. And it all gets incredibly wild with the addition of the Grapple Hook. Now I'm gonna go into all the equipment they have in the preview, but the Grapple Hook is one I gotta definitely highlight. That thing is so awesome. Now I'm not a master at it. I'm playing on mouse and keyboard and not entirely gotten used to the way it feels to swing around, to jump out of it, to zip around corners. So it's just gonna take more practice to really get used to everything you can really do with it. But I've seen some insane clips on Twitter of guys, for example on Bazaar, grappling underneath that balcony and swinging up under it with a rocket launcher, flying into the air and raining rockets down on enemies. It's just insane to see. Some of the most fun I had in the preview was combining the Grapple Hook with a graph hammer hammer or a shotgun was endlessly satisfying to zip around a player, especially if you grapple the player themselves and fly at them and melee them. It's so sick. And I cannot wait to see what you can do with vehicles in that Grapple Hook. You only have 3 shots, but what's interesting is that you can actually stack them. So I'd pick up a Grapple Hook, wouldn't use it for a few minutes, another one would spawn, or I'd pick it up off a dead enemy and it'd add to my current count. So you can go from 3 to 5 to 6, which may be a little excessive. I'm thinking, in feedback I provide, I'd prefer to just have it stay at 3. If you're a really skilled player, you could really exploit that to your advantage. It could be really frustrating. But one of the coolest features is that you can actually grapple weapons. A random thought I have is if you see an enemy player approaching the rocket launcher and you have a grapple hook from afar, actually grappling it before they get to it, retrieving it and killing them would be really cool to see. And another cool side note is that you can actually use plasma grenades to blast weapons towards you, which is wild. Again, love the physics in the game. That is so cool. In addition to that, we have the drop wall, which is pretty effective in firefights. I've seen some people sort of exploit that one as well, where they create a makeshift bubble shield around them, and bots have no idea how to react to that. Obviously, players can find a solution to that, I'm sure, but I can see that getting a little annoying if players combine their drop shields like that. At that point, you may as well just add the bubble shield to the game. And you gotta be careful with your timing too. That thing takes a good 1 or 2 seconds to actually deploy, so I originally thought it could be a little annoying if you're running toward a player and they just drop that wall as soon as you see them and start firing at you. That'd be really frustrating. Same with overshield and active camo. I actually really like the addition of being able to equip it at will. It could be annoying getting in a firefight with someone and you get their health halfway down and they activate that thing and end up killing you because of that, but it also takes a few seconds to activate, so if you're accurate, I can't imagine it being too much of a problem. But I think the potential for that is cool. For example, if you pick it up and there happens to be a situation, especially in objective modes, where a teammate, for example, is picking up the flag, and you have an overshield in your possession, and you think, well, maybe I should give the overshield to the flag carrier, you can actually drop that equipment and give it to them, and they can take advantage of that. So that could be really cool as a just team aspect, sharing that among teammates in certain situations. And I can't remember the name of the UAV thing, but I didn't find it too useful. It might be useful in objective modes. For example, if you're playing defense on your flag, or you're going after the team's flag, or even an oddball or something like that, deploying that in an area where you know there's going to be a lot of enemies could definitely help you tackle certain situations, whether you're on offense or defense. So it's hard to see with the bots because, again, they're just so computerized and pretty predictable, so I didn't find it very effective in Arena Slayer, but I think it has a lot of potential in objective modes. And based on the multiplayer reveal video, there is other equipment in the game that I'm not really going to comment on now until I get my hands on it, but I'm very excited to see how those affect the gameplay as well. So the 3 maps in the preview were Live Fire, Recharge, and Bazaar, and I really like all of them. There are a couple areas playing against bots that felt like were just completely barren, where players and bots never went. I only got to play in 1 map in PvP, and Recharge with real players versus with bots felt entirely differently. There were areas of the map with real players that were far more occupied than they were against bots. So until I can play more PvP, it's hard to determine really how these matches feel with real players, but with bots they felt great. I think Recharge is my favorite of the 3 so far. Love the verticality. I really dig the weapon placement. There's a good blend of narrow corridors and wide open areas. And with all the equipment that I've used so far, I think Recharge best utilizes what's at your disposal between the grappling hook and the drop wall. They both thrive on that map. Bazaar is pretty nostalgic with its references to Halo 2, but also a really fun map. Also takes great advantage of the grappling hook. And Live Fire is actually my least favorite of the 3, but it is fun to play on, and I weirdly played the best there than I did across all 3 maps. So I've come to the conclusion that I actually do enjoy the addition of having players wear their custom colors in-game versus the traditional red and blue. That being said, I think the outlines on both enemies and teammates is a little too bold and almost entirely eliminates the inclusion of that feature, because all I ever see is bright blue and bright red, so it's basically still red versus blue. I'd like the option to either dim that down a bit or even just remove the outlines entirely and just have names or emblems above enemy players to differentiate them. But I'm also not opposed to having red versus blue return, because I know a lot of players have voiced that desire. I'm fine if it returns. I think it'd be cool if 343 could give us the option of either seeing original red versus blue or seeing custom colors. Would be great. I don't know how difficult that is to achieve, but I think it'd be cool if we could have the option.
Were it so easy.
So a couple gripes. I think the chatter in game is a little overbearing, and this is not even including voice chat amongst teammates. I turned off voice chat every single time I played, and even between AI, Jeff, and Spartan Chatter, it is just too much, man. I can deal with Spartan Chatter, and of course I'm always gonna want Jeff, but the personal AI is a a great idea on paper, but it's not totally working in game just yet. I think I just get a little annoyed because the AI only ever comments on very obvious things you're doing. For example, if you pick up any weapon, he's like, hey, you picked up this weapon. Or if you do anything cool, he's like, great job, Spartan, you're killing it.
DR-75 acquired. Commando rifle acquired. Skewer obtained. Plasma pistol obtained. Bulldog shotgun acquired.
You must be silenced.
Don't get me wrong, I love the motivation, I love the encouragement, but I don't need it. It kind of just annoys me. I'd rather just get hyped up with my teammates and hear Jeff comment on my double kills and triple kills. Don't need an AI on top of that commenting. It's too much. That being said, there is a lot of potential for it if they refine what they're saying and really the ultimate use and purpose for it being there. 4 voices I'd love to hear that I'd use anytime if they keep the AI around. Sergeant Johnson, Cortana, Buck, and the Arbiter. It would be so cool. That's probably a big ask. I don't know how difficult that is to pull off either, but if they can do it, I would absolutely love that. I know in the custom settings, you can go in and customize your announcer voice, and I'm pretty sure they're referring to Jeff. I don't know who else they would throw into the game to mix it up. Personally, I'm always gonna keep Jeff. No one can replace him in my mind.
Unfriggin' believable.
There's a lot of potential there. We'll have to wait and see what they do. I also really dig the practice range. I think it's a great place to warm up before matches, whether you play with bots or just choose to go to the range to get familiar with any weapon before you jump into PvP. And this is a minor nitpick. I'm sure the UI and overall presentation is mostly placeholders. It's not entirely finalized just yet. I think 343's even said that. But visually speaking, aesthetically, I think it'd be so cool if in the weapon drill, in the distance, instead of just trees and mountains, you could see a big halo ring. And I think varying times of day could be cool. I imagine it with, like God rays at golden hour coming into the arena would look really beautiful. That ultimately doesn't matter, but I think it'd be cool if the time of day shifted and the background was a little more interesting. As a very random aesthetic nitpick I have about the weapon drills. The battle pass seems to be pretty solid. I love that the game's free to play. I think it's gonna open the doors for many new players and even old players to come together and have the initial player base be very strong. And even just the 3 maps I've played between weapons and minimal equipment, I haven't even played with vehicles yet or objective modes, but so far even just Arena Slayer with bots is a ton of fun. So the game still has much to reveal. Honestly, I'm going to be amazed if the game even launches this holiday like they say it's supposed to. I'm not entirely concerned about paywalls. I can see there being maybe some really awesome weapon skins or armor skins that you have to outright pay for, but 343 is claimed, and even in the preview it seems that you can unlock the vast majority of it, which I much prefer. I know they got to monetize it somehow if it's free to play, but I am optimistic about it. I didn't have any trouble or annoyance with unlocking what's available in the preview. Of course, they give you credits. I didn't have to buy any credits with my own money. They give you plenty to unlock stuff while you're playing. I also love the challenges, and you can swap them out at will. For example, if there's a game type you don't love and there's a challenge for that, you can swap it out for something else. Everything I played was on PC. Feels amazing. The only annoyance I had with the preview is that every single time I booted up the game, it didn't save any of my keybinds. It didn't save any of my visual settings, which is understandable. It's not the final game. It's just a technical preview, but there are great options. Field of view, of course, keybinds, everything is highly customizable, and even the base default keys are almost perfect for me. The only one I changed is that by default G on a keyboard is your grenade, which I think is much too far of a reach to throw a grenade, so I changed grenade to F for frag. That just makes sense to me. It's also much closer to WASD. And G I use to drop weapons at will, which is also a pretty cool feature. For example, if you pick up the sniper and your buddy is like, dude, I wanted the sniper, can I please have it? Instead of having to find another weapon to drop it, you can outright just drop it for a teammate. That's pretty cool. And unfortunately, I had to play the preview on low settings entirely. I have a pretty strong rig, and obviously this is not an optimized finalized game, but even the preview, I struggle to maintain 70 frames at even medium settings. So to stick around the 75, 80 frame range, I had to play on low settings. And even on low at 2K, it doesn't look disastrous, but it certainly doesn't look next gen by any means. So lastly, the music's beautiful. Main menu, multiplayer. I like the inclusion of multiplayer music sort of swelling in as you near the end of a match. It makes things very exciting. I've seen that in a million other games, but it's cool to see it in Halo. You have traditional Halo music and the new stuff that I think at first kind of threw me off with the synths and the drums, but I think it sounds very distinctly Halo, primarily Halo 2. I'd like to see in the final game, whether it's through campaign or multiplayer, the return of strings and piano. I think it's always very beautiful. And my final thoughts are just the excitement for the future. I'm hoping I can have the opportunity to preview the game further with additional flights leading to launch, keeping my fingers crossed for not only objective modes, but Big Team Battle in particular. I love 4v4 Slayer, Team Slayer, Arena Slayer, I always have since the beginning, but the most fun I've ever had is playing with friends in both objective modes and especially Big Team Battle. There is nothing quite like getting in a Warthog with your friends, attacking an enemy base, getting their flag and escaping on a Warthog with the intensity of the battles is just timelessly fun, and I cannot wait to have those experiences in Halo Infinite. There is so much potential and a lot of new stuff to be excited about, so I am very much looking forward to experiencing other game types and additional equipment, especially with friends in a big team battle setting. Obviously, I've shared a lot about my feelings on Halo Infinite. If there's anything I missed or didn't go in depth on that you'd like to hear more about, please do not hesitate to comment below. I make these videos because I love connecting with whoever's watching, so if you even feel remotely encouraged or motivated to comment in any way, whether you hated everything I've said, loved it, or concerned about certain things, don't hesitate. Comment down below, I will respond. Let's start a conversation. Be excited together, be concerned together. We'll talk it all out in the comments and just continue to get hyped about the launch this holiday. We got a bunch of gameplay on our channel with no commentary if you're interested, between Marine bots, ODST bots, and one PvP match, so encourage you to check that out if you want to see it. And overall, I'm stoked. I'm very excited. I mean, it's easy to be excited because I'm a longtime Halo fan. I've been waiting a very long time for this game. I know many of you have as well. So while I have a few minor concerns, I think 343 is being very receptive to feedback, and they have been honest that they can't make all of the changes prior to launch, but I think between the flights now, launch, and hopefully the subsequent months following launch, it can really become something that is amazing for everyone. They can't please everyone. They won't please me in every way, I'm sure, but right now the technical preview, even though it's rough around the edges, was incredibly fun, and I'm ultimately very excited. So again, comment down below if you want to talk, and I look forward to hearing from you guys.